In 1997, GoldenEye 007 was released on the Nintendo 64. Now, GoldenEye changed first-person shooters on console forever. Now, there had been plenty of first-person shooters on the PC, but the first real successful FPS to come to console was GoldenEye, and it changed the landscape forever. Because you had already had games on PC like Doom, Quake, Star Wars Dark Forces is one that really comes to mind. A game where you have missions, you have objectives, and you have to complete them before you can extract from the level. And that's kind of exactly what the 007 FPS games are. And especially that was set by GoldenEye, is they're kind of mini immersive sim kind of video games where you drop into a level, you have a few objectives, you have a few ways to get there, you complete the objective, and you leave the level. And that was something set by Rare. But Rare only made one James Bond video game. But Rare, they kind of made a sequel. It was Perfect Dark. And while Perfect Dark is basically a sequel to GoldenEye without all of the James Bond branding, Rareware never touched James Bond ever again. They made what some people might call the best James Bond game, and they dipped out. And so EA went on to publish tons of James Bond games. Basically, James Bond games till the end of time. Well, until the Wii U, and then that killed it. As the Wii U will do. And I've played almost every single James Bond game. There's a few I haven't touched. I think there's one on the PlayStation 3 I haven't played. But for the most part, I've played all of them. And I always told people, the best James Bond game is not GoldenEye, but is 007 Nightfire.
Don't love me quietly, do it with intensity. We'll miss the point. Well, with everything you stray, oh, there's no love to be gained. 'Cause we all need a civilized, and I would almost love you more. We will throw this building up just so we can tear it down. Nightfire.
Now, there are three different versions of Nightfire. There is the console version, the PC version, and the handheld version. Now, I'm not really going to talk about the handheld version. It's a Game Boy game. It's kind of cool, I guess. But we're really going to be talking about the PC version and the console version. And the console version is the one I personally grew up with, and I think it's the better, more interesting video game than the PC version. The PC version, the most interesting thing about the PC version of Nightfire is that it was made by Gearbox. You know, like the creators of Borderlands. Now, they're two completely different video games. They kind of are the same. Sometimes you can see where the levels are very similar. There's some rooms that are pretty much identical in the PC version and the console version, but they are completely different versions. The PC version's still pretty playable. You can find it pretty easily these days if you know where to look on the internet. It takes just like one Google search. You can find a package. It works pretty good. Just if NVIDIA control panel or whatever asks you if you want to fix any glitches, just say no. I also couldn't get the game to run at anything higher than 1080p, so just know that. So the story of 007 Nightfire, the story of the James Bond games, I don't think really matters. Ian Fleming, the creator of James Bond, I mean, if you want to, it's kind of a sexist weirdo. I mean, that's kind of the James Bond video games. I mean, they're based off Roald Dahl. Did you know this? Did you know that James Bond might be based off Roald Dahl? Like the guy who wrote Charlie in the Chocolate Factory. I don't know. Look that up. Don't worry about it. But when playing 007 Nightfire, the story is basically you're James Bond, right? Everyone knows James Bond. He's the sexy spy agent guy who's gonna save the world every time. And this time there's some guy named Drake. He owns a place called Phoenix. and he's gonna nuke the world. That's what he's gonna do. He said he wasn't gonna nuke the world. He said he was saving the world from the nukes, but no, he lied. He lied. Who saw that coming? So you play the first mission, and it's like in Paris, and it's pre-guided. You only get to play this mission if you play the game, I think, on the easiest difficulty, and it's like a tutorial. You don't really get to do much, but it kind of shows you all the fancy things you can do. The thing you're gonna notice, the thing that really stood out to me while playing this James Bond video game, that kind of probably went over my head when I played it when I was younger, is just that this game is incredibly horny. That it's just like James Bond is with a new woman in like every mission.
James.
You're the deep cover agent?
It's not as deep as it looks.
Sorry to interrupt your debriefing, 007.
Is that dress standard company issue, Nightshade?
Don't get any ideas, 007. It's armored in all the right places.
Hang on to me, Zoe.
I thought you'd never ask. Nice landing, James. Why do you always seem to end up on top?
Was this car here the whole night?
Perhaps, but you look like you needed the rest.
I don't recall getting much rest at all, James.
Ah, Mr. Bond, at last. This is Kiko Hayashi, my bodyguard. I assure you, she's quite skilled.
No doubt.
You saved my life.
How will I repay you?
If I live through this, I'll need a large sake and one hell of a massage. We'll let the autopilot be our designated driver.
Oh, James.
So they really liked that they scanned Pierce Brosnan, and they like really were like, yeah, we made a really good model of James Bond, yo. Like, this one's good.
Adding to the fantasy, Agent 007 looks and feels just like the film star himself, Pierce Brosnan. Thanks in part to a laser scanning process that captured the features of his face using over 250,000 data points, Brosnan's persona as 007 brings the Bond film star into the hands of game players.
Similar to 007 GoldenEye, this game mostly has a few different kinds of missions where you play as James Bond, you drop into a level, like the first level, you start out outside, you gotta get to a party, you find yourself into some castle, gotta either sneak past the guards or just brute force your way and kill everyone. You go to the party, you hang out at the party, and then things escalate, you shoot a bunch of people, and you blow up a helicopter. And that's how most of at least the ground shooting levels are, is you usually have a few objectives, like take a picture of this thing, go to this building, sneak around, don't get caught. My biggest issue and my biggest gripe with all of the James Bond video games, and I think they're just fundamentally flawed, is that especially they're meant to be, the levels are meant to be replayed a lot so you complete missions and get a better score. That's the fun of the James Bond video games. The problem is that's only fun when you've played the mission 100 times, and not fun when you play the mission the first time. Because most of the time, your first experience with a James Bond game is you running around like an idiot, not knowing what to do, not being really clear what your objective is, and just getting the kill screen over and over again. And these games are just Nightfire is horrible with checkpoints. GoldenEye's even worse, where you're at the end of the level, but you screw something up and it sends you to the back of you have to replay the whole level again. You lost 10 minutes of your life. And there's only one real level in Nightfire I think super egregious. There's a level where you're in like a submarine version of the car, and it's so long, and at the end you have to avoid getting shot by a submarine, and it's like, really, like, what do you do? And then you die and you have to go 10 minutes back, and you do it over and over again. And that's kind of what I realized playing through a few of these James Bond games again, is the fun is knowing the level and going through it very well and executing very well. But that doesn't happen until you're dedicated to playing the game a lot. And so I think the games might be a little flawed. It's not quite immersive sim in the way that I think they thought it was gonna be, because for the most part, you don't have much deviation. There's not that much deviation in the games. You can kind of do things in whatever order you want, but the game is intended for you to go on one specific path and to do it. And the PC version is, I think, way worse at this than the console version. Like, literally, like, the second level of the PC version is, like, this really terrible sneak mission where you just have to wait and wait for, like, this guard to show up, and then you have to kill him, and then you have to sneak around, and the game doesn't make it very clear what the heck you're supposed to do. And then I encounter a glitch where I couldn't open the door, and then you just shoot people with a sniper rifle for, like, way too long. But really, I mean, when it comes to the real meat of the 007 video games, it's the multiplayer. And so when people talk about GoldenEye, I mean, people talk about playing the game and how revolutionary the gameplay was to people who had played it at the time. It's the multiplayer. Everyone talks about, oh, GoldenEye multiplayer. That's what everyone talks about. And I think Nightfire's multiplayer is better than GoldenEye's multiplayer in any day of the week. The thing that I think makes Nightfire's multiplayer so good, I think, is the size of the levels. The levels are massive. I think they're intricate. I think they're even fun to explore in a weird way. I think they're kind of fun to look around and explore in. And also, bots. There's bots in the multiplayer of Nightfire. And you can play 4 players on the Cube and on the Xbox. But the PS2 only supports 2 people because it only had 2 ports. Still don't know what Sony was thinking, putting only 2 controller ports on the PS2. I think that's like the biggest flaw of the PS2, is that it only has 2 controller ports for some reason. And nothing supported that multi-tap. I know you say, oh, there's a multi-tap. Ain't nothing support that thing. And while the PC version has a multiplayer and it's online, you can kind of, I think, maybe get into games sometimes. I think there is some fan server that exists on the PC version. But that's something that doesn't really exist in video games these days, is like a bespoke offline multiplayer mode for your friends that kind of is janky as heck and is broken, but it's just kind of built to be fun with your friends. And I think Nightfire's really takes what makes GoldenEye's really good, just kind of ups it up. You have this rocket launcher that's just a guided missile, and it rules. The Sentinel, you just blow your friends up with the Sentinel. You have a bunch of different characters from James Bond eras. You can play as Pussy Galore for some reason. If you've ever wanted to play as Pussy Galore in a video game, you can now. You can play as Jaws. And so, I don't really know what I'm getting to in this video. I just really love 007 Nightfire and wanted to talk about it. I just really like this video game. It's got some weird jank. It's got some real horniness to it. It's got some weird Japanese stuff going on. So, and really what I'm saying is, it's a video game that has it all.